Well, tubes, welcome back to another rig episode. So I need to get this transmission figured out. The clutch will not release. This is not frozen up going into the transmission, but there's something in here, probably the clutch itself is froze up. You can stomp as hard as you want on the clutch pedal and nothing will move. I'd like to pull the top off of it. I got to get the shifter unhooked. I guess actually if I pull the top off, I can probably just leave the shifter on there. Maybe I can just throw the shifter off the side. This is a 1610, I believe a 1610 full round U-joint. Oh yeah, awesome. I was hoping I kind of get this loose today. I'm not going to do too much, and then tomorrow's Sunday. I'll drive my forklift up here and we can actually pull it out. This PTO shaft down here looks like it's just got a 3/8 bolt. Well, that was pretty easy. There's a set screw right here that looks like it's made to take this off, and it's been twisted off. I think maybe the easiest thing to do is just pull the shift tower off of here, and I think I can just kind of throw all this to the side. So I got all the transmission bolts out except the top two. I've got everything else loose except I got to go home and get my 1/2-inch impact to get the carrier bearing loose. Alright, I think I'll just get you a good vantage point over here and time-lapse away. This thing's pretty rough looking in here. I guess it wasn't like the clutch disc was stuck to the flywheel, it's just the clutch pedal wouldn't move. And I guess maybe there's something down in here froze up. I guess I'm gonna just get my impact wrench to buzz it off. Got some heat cracks, but I'm not gonna surface it. Man, that clutch looks nearly new. Looks like maybe it had a rat's nest or something living in it, and they've kind of ate the rat peas kind of ate the springs up or something. I want to grab my camera real quick. Mike's coming to work for me in the morning. He's going to do a bunch of welding, and I'm not going to be around. I kind of wanted to show what I was going to get him to do so you could see it before and after, I guess. I got this plate water jetted out. I missed the bolt holes, had to weld them up and tap new holes, drilled and tapped new holes in it for a new brake pedal. This it's got this scatterrational steering column scabbed in it, and the steering shaft lines up perfect with a brake pedal. I guess you had to curl your foot around it. Anyway, I moved it over in this, and it's got currently an air throttle, and I've decided, I had somebody ask me the difference. One had 2 governors, and that's a good question, and I want to take the time to explain that, just not right this minute. When we get that all hooked up, it'll make a lot of sense. But I want to do away with the air throttle for here and hook up to the truck governor that I originally said we were going to bypass. I'm going to use it. I'm going to hook the actual throttle up and show you how that works, because it's a little bit interesting in some ways. Anyway, he's going to cut all this crap out. I'm going to reuse this plate. It's got a piece of 3/16 already welded in here up to here. He's going to cut a notch out of it so this fits in. And I want to try to seal up all the holes in this cab. And you know, if you get it sealed completely up, you can keep the wasp out of it, which is really nice. But moreover, I want the big holes gone so the rats can't get in it. Anyway, he's going to work on that. I was going to have him clean this up. The welding on this looks real rough. I just kind of hit this with a grinder. It looks so much better than this. I was going to have all this welded out, plate the ends of it. I think I'm going to, as I said, I think I'm going to move the controls for the sand line up there. I know some of y'all didn't like that. I'm going to explain why I'm dead set on it. I think I'm just going to cut this whole walkway off the side of the rig. Just have the one little one back there. I feel like that's all I want. Anyway, and I'm going to put the hydraulic tank is down there. It used to be on the other side back here. I'm going to put it right there. And then if I got enough room, I think I decided I'm going to actually move the batteries and mount a battery box right here. Well, would you look at that? I took a whole gallon of paint, spread it over about 10 feet. I think I might have got a little spur happy, but all right, I got a homemade clutch lineup tool here. Okay, so I got my input shaft, my lineup tool, I should say, stuck through both clutch disc and through the center plate. Okay, now I got the shaft stuck into the throw-up bearing so it'll hold the weight. Apparently it takes 2 welding rods to hold a hook on a chain to pick up a transmission. I'm going to put the clutch brake in. I wanted to show you this visually. We'll talk about it more later. But this goes in right here and sits right there and spins with the transmission. And when you pull the clutch in, the throw-out bearing pulls back and hits this. And we'll have to adjust it. But these transmissions don't have synchronizers in them, so there's nothing to stop this rotating, stop the clutch mass until you use a clutch brake. I went and grabbed a couple long bolts. I don't want to use these to necessarily pull the transmission up, though we can use them to put a little bit of bind on it and we don't break anything. But they'll work sort of like dowel pins. They'll keep it oriented correctly. All right, let's push on this thing, see if it'll go. All right, let's put this thing in high gear here. Okay, the next thing we got to do, I probably have already went up too far here. We got to get the, I don't know if y'all can see in there, yeah, kind of. We got to get that all the way back and up, and it goes over that ear of the throw-up bearing. I just had to sort of get it to bind there. All right. done for the day. Well, tubers, they look a little bit different. So there's been a few things going on here, and I didn't feel like any of them made very good videos, and so we just sort of skipped ahead a little ways, and I'm going to bring you up to snuff where we're at. So other than the transmission, what's happened here, I didn't have this sandblasted. I just simply took and pressure washed the frame here really good. Kind of went over it with some 100 grit sandpaper. Didn't spend a lot of time on it. And painted the frame inside and out. And the reason for this is I'm going to have to run all the air lines, and I wanted the air lines to not have paint on them. I wanted the inside of the frame where you can see them to already be painted so the lines stayed black. I just think it looks really cool when you paint it and then put the lines on it. Anyway, so after I got the frame there painted, I had a company come out and blast the poles for me. So we sandblasted the poles and I painted them. I thought this would be like a 2-day project, blast it one day, paint it the next. It turned out to really be a pain. It's just got so many different angles. You've got to get to everything from every which direction. And they ended up sandblasting on this thing 2 whole days, and I painted on it basically 3 days. This was a honest 5-day project to paint these poles. And I'm glad I got it done. At the time I was kind of wishing I hadn't started because I was committed, but you know, whatever. Anyway, I got the poles painted. That's the only really big things that's happened, except I've started working on the brakes. I got 2 new brake chambers back here. Nothing's hooked up though. And that's kind of going to be my next project, is I'm going to get underneath here. I got 2 more brake chambers. Is I'm going to change out the brake chambers, get them put on, and I'm going to start hooking up air lines. So I need to show you the cab here too. I've done some work in here. I've had some work done in here. I've sprayed it green. I had this water jetted out, the dash. I put the dash in there. The steering column originally was just welded to this little thin frame. I don't know if y'all remember, but it broke. It came loose. The steering wheel was just fell in my lap when I was trying to drive it. Anyway, I cut this out of 3/16 and kind of welded it in. This was a whole frame is all bent and walkie-jawed. It didn't fit right. Anyway, I got this in and got it sort of welded. They tried to weld it here and had burnt through. I got that all built up so it looks so scabby. And then I had Mike the welder come work for me several days, and he cut the floor out up here. It had been this piece had already been scabbed in, but it was cut jagged through here somewhere, and he cut out another piece and laid in here and welded it. Got a good floor. And he also, what else did we do? Set the hydraulic tank here, welded it down, and he built me a battery box. I moved my batteries from up there back down to here. I'm fixing to install these brake chambers. I've talked about this before, but I wanted to show again so it'll make more sense when we hook these up. There's 2 halves to this. There is a big spring back here that pushes all this rod forward, and this is what applies the brakes. And you've got to hook air up to the spring brake side, spring brake, and this diaphragm collapses the spring and releases the brakes. This is the parking brake. It takes air to release the parking brake. Another thing, I wanted to show you this. I've already hooked the back brakes up and used quite a bit of stuff. I've kind of went through and bought the different hoses and fittings that I'm going to need, and the number of them is just absolutely astronomical. There's so much stuff in here to start and build a rig from scratch. There is quite a few $1,000s just of fittings, not including the hose, and this is not hydraulics, this is just pneumatics. Alright, I got the brake cans put on. I got a couple more valves I'm going to put on that's got to go right in front of that axle. Can y'all see out there, right there? I'm going to do them off camera as well. This is called a relay valve. It's got a sensing line. You can run a small 1/4 inch or something line from the brake pedal to here. And whatever pressure you apply to this port, it supplies it out here. We've got a big line that's going to come in from the air tank. So if you put 20 pounds here, it's got a 20 pounds regulated air pressure comes out to here, and this is what actually applies the brakes. This is called a quick release. I've got bought 4 or 5 of those. This is going to be used in a lot of different places, but it is used specifically in the emergency brakes. This mounts in the frame. We've got the air that comes from the this is the valve that's going in the dash. When you release the brakes, you push this down Air comes out of this and into here and to both axles. And when you release this, instead of all the air having to come back to this valve, it can blow out this valve right here. Well, I wrote the whole day, but I got all that stuff sort of mounted and the brake cams put on it. I don't know why it took so long. I was going to make a point. Those are spring brakes. They've got the spring part in the back. Originally on the rear end it only had service brakes. There wasn't parking brakes. I don't like that. I have put the spring parking brakes back here as well. I have seen more than once you get in a situation to where the brakes don't hold, or you get an axle where there's not a lot of weight on it or something, and these things can roll, and it doesn't cost really any more money to put parking brakes on both axles. I'm ready to start with the air system. I'm going to sort of give a disclaimer. I'm going to say this once. I want to do some things on this air system the way the brakes work. I want to do it the way I want it done. These well service rigs are not subject to DOT inspections, or at least DOT regulations, in the same way that a truck is. There's a whole lot of things that don't apply to these because they are not classified in Texas as a vehicle. They're equipment. You know, you don't have DOT inspections on tractors or anything of that nature. And anyway, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I want it to be as simple as can be while still working, and nothing extra. I want it to be, you know, it's not going to be a dual air system where a primary and secondary air system. Of course, it wasn't originally. I think I'm probably just going to gut the brakes off the front of it. We'll just have brakes on the back axle. The back axle will stop this thing just fine. Also, to keep in mind, this thing probably won't have more than a few hundred miles put on it, and the rest of its entire service life. Like, I think in probably a few hundred miles it'll be scrapped, because it's going out to my lease and it's going to drill a couple of wells and work on a few wells a year, and it probably won't get driven more than, 20 or 30 miles a year just across a 1 square mile area. The other thing is it's got 717 gears in it, and at 2,000 RPMs driveline speed, it'll run like 34 miles an hour or something like that. Anyway, I'm done saying all that, but I want to make a point. I'm going to do things that probably some of y'all that work on trucks say, that's not how that's supposed to be. I don't care, that's how I'm doing it. So first things first, right up there is our compressor, and I have got a new stainless line already hooked to the compressor, and it's going to come down and hook into this weld fitting. We're going to come to here, and we're going to bring the air into the tank. This is the only tank now. I'm going to put a larger tank somewhere else later, but we'll get to that when we get there. This is going to suffice for now, but our air's coming in here. It's going to come out of here and go down to a T. We'll have an air line. This air line actually goes back to the brake valves, and then there'll be one that goes to the brake pedal, and that'll be the only thing connected to the air tank. Everything else will be split off the valves in other ways. I'm going to put a pressure relief valve in the back and a water drain in the bottom. I'm going to time lapse all this. Let's do it. Alright, you got a pressure relief valve put in and a tank drain. We'll tie this cable here somewhere where you just pull up and pull on the cable, blow the water out of it. I got my other air line. We got this T. This will be the only place that air sort of hooks to the tank. We got one that goes back to the relay valve, and this front one is going to snake up here under the floor, obviously, and hook up to the brake valve. I've somehow managed to get paint on this. Anyway, I have tapped these holes in the floor, and I bought some bolts, and I just realized that the bolts for the back's not going to be long enough. So underneath here, these upper parts are what goes to the brakes, and so we'll have one line that goes back as the sensing line to the relay valve at the back, potentially to the front brakes. I'm really thinking I'll probably just disable the front brakes. But anyway, this is our air supply. I got to snake it back around how I want it, but we're going to use it right here as the this is going to sort of be the manifold. And so we'll have air come in here. It likes to come out here, go up into the cab. The side over here will come out, snake up and around, and go to the air governor. I'm gonna hook a few lines up on that and catch you in a minute. Okay, got a couple lines hooked up on the brake valve. One of them comes up there through the floor. It basically just comes from the air tank up to the valve and through the valve up to here. I mounted this. This is a filter, Harbor Freight. It wasn't Harbor Freight, I think it was Amazon, whatever. Cheap filter, water dryer, whatever. And this will keep the trash out of all the valves and everything. It's always a problem with a rig, is getting crap in the valves. And so basically everything is going to have filtered air, and it's going to come up here. This is a manifold. It's going to go to our valve that basically sends air to the controls on the back and also to the parking brakes. It's just going to be basically everything goes through there except the main brakes. The next thing though, get to work on this. I made this hose up. This hose is going to go from the brake valves up to the air governor. I'm going to use this Strataflex, or what do they call it, R1 or R5 or something, air brake hose for everything that's sort of exposed to the sun. I think it'll make it last longer. Anyway, I got to change this piece right here. Is called air governor. This is the new one. What this does is it's got a port that senses the air pressure, and when the air pressure gets up to about 120, it supplies air out of this center port here, and that in turn turns off the compressor. And when we'll put you up here, we're going to swap this out. I get this hooked up. I want to hook that up and put a pressure gauge in and a couple of valves up here. We can sort of get this sewed up enough to make air. I'm going to start it and see if the compressor works and the governor works and everything else. I got everything sort of hooked up. I've got the airline hooked up to go to the governor. This one is going to go to the differential lock, and I just pinched it off. I think the valve's at home. It goes over there. I got the air gauge hooked up. I guess let's crank this thing up. I don't have any oil in the transmission. Probably got some sand in there. That'll probably keep it nice and lubed. off. Yep, there it just came back on. I wanted to show off again how good this thing starts. I talked about this when we worked on the fuel pump. So I think that there is something not right. It only got up to 100 and then kind of leaked back off. There's an unloader valve in the top of that head, and there might be something wrong with it, but we can work on that later. It builds air. It builds enough air to run or to work, and we'll worry about that later. On to the next thing. So I had planned on sort of finishing the air system for the truck. There's one line that's hooked up to the this will be the line that goes to the parking brakes. It's got to be run up here, come in the cab. This is the parking brake valve. It's stuck up there. I got to put the jam nut and everything on it. This is the valve for the diff lock, and I had to run a line to it, and that would have the, if I got those two lines done, that'll have the air system on the truck finished other than the transmission. And I'm going to do some goofy things with it we'll talk about later. And I want to get those hoses ran, and then in a video or two down the road when we run all the air lines for the rig part, I was going to try to design it and lay it all out and like tape it all together, which one big umbilical cord, if you would, so that I don't have to crawl up under that rig 15 times with 15 different hoses, if that makes sense. Have them all nice together, maybe put them in some hose wrap. But it rained last night. There's not a lot of water standing here, but the ground's wet. I'm not going to crawl around on the ground. So this is Thursday. I'm going to start a new video today and try to get, well, there's just a lot more stuff to do. I'm just going to start another video, but I'm going to try to get this edited tonight so y'all can have it for tomorrow. And anyway, I guess that's about it. Appreciate you watching. I think next week I'll go to work on the exhaust. I'm hoping Friday, tomorrow, I've got my driller console is all designed. It's supposed to be water jetted out. Hopefully I can go get it all, and we can make that sort of the next video, putting all that together, putting the valves in it, and running a bunch of airlines. Appreciate you watching. Catch you on the next one.